What's good? This is your boy Tico Tren, and I'm gonna talk about human nature in this podcast or this live stream podcast, these type thing, because I hear a lot of people throwing that around like they actually know what the fuck it is, but they really don't know what the fuck it is. And I always hear a lot of people throwing it around. The overall problem with human nature is to actually understand human nature, you would actually have to actually match up characteristics of all humans that match all humans for the most part. That is the fundamental that is the fundamental principles of human nature. You have to be able to match. You have to basically take up all the characteristics, such as your lovely shit like physical characteristics, feelings, behavioral traits of a group of people or large, of pretty much humankind, to basically determine if you can actually understand human nature for the most part. It's the fundamental difference between it's the fundamental difference between saying, well, because two black people robbed a store, all black people rob a store. I understand human nature of the black people. That's not actually the case. Or another good example of that is because all the women on a dating site say this is what they look for. That's what they look for. When in fact, dating sites are a small sample size. Dating sites are a small sample size of actually a very minute sample size of actual people in the dating pool for the most part. I think what the dating sites only house what all of 10% of the population. So running off of 10% of the population, you're trying to say the whole entire population acts like everybody on a dating site. Well, no, it wasn't you. You're actually pretty good at understanding human nature. There are a lot of people who don't understand human nature. MGTOW threads, you're actually pretty good at it. You're actually better than a lot of people at it than that I've actually noticed because I've actually watched your shit. You're actually a lot better at it, and you don't even say you actually know it, but you're actually a lot better at it than a lot of other people do say they are. Um, and the thing about human nature that, like I was saying, basically, those are bad examples of knowing human nature. A base understanding of human nature is the MGTOW community. They all tend to fall under a base human nature for the most part. A base human nature, well, not base human nature. They all tend to fall into the same behavioral. Most of them fall into the same behavioral categories and behavioral traits for the most part. A good portion of MGTOWs, I would say about a good 80% of MGTOWs, they tend to not show their face. Okay, that's one characteristic that you can actually put out there. Cool. Another characteristic of MGTOWs is they're not known for using their actual government name. If they do, it's because the cat's already out of the bag and it's a little late. That's another characteristic of MGTOW. Another characteristic of MGTOW is amenity and amenity. Basically, they like their privacy for the most part. They love their privacy for the most part. They don't want everybody knowing their face, what they look like, where they live, just shit along the lines of that for the most part. Those are base characteristics for MGTOW. They basically take every single precaution to protect themselves, both financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, and their family members in the same token for that matter, for the most part. So you really can't say MGTOW hates women when in fact they take the extra precautions to actually protect their family members and their loved ones from the shit that they put out online. That is a baseline characteristics in human nature of MGTOW. You may not like it, but it is what it is. These tend to be the base characteristics of MGTOW. They're all about protecting their identity. They're all about protecting their privacy. Anything that can identify them basically is pretty much human nature of MGTOW. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying basically only said 80% of them actually don't show their face, and a lot of them, 80% of them actually don't use their real name unless the cat's out of the bag. Like the cat's out of the bag for the most part, and then they basically use their real name unless they're docs for the most part. That's typically how that works. Um, another Another good example of human nature is me. What a lot of people actually don't know about me is I tend to use a different voice online than I do in person for the most part. Um, no, there's no voice changer. It's basically me. It's basically like a singing exercise for the most part when I actually speak online. I think the only people who's actually heard my actual voice would be outside of family would be Baron Yam, True Sherm, um, MGTOW in the Wind, and MGTOW Life. Those are only four people who's actually ever heard my actual voice outside of outside of like basically offline basically. Yeah, you I said you already, MGTOW Life. Um, yeah, those are the only people who's actually heard my actual voice, the actual pitch, tone, and actual voice actually use offline for the most part with my children and family for the most part. So that's another human nature. That's another human nature thing. Think of it like how True Sherm does his shows. Basically, he has the mini Sherm show and he has the True Sherm show. The mini Sherm show basically uses a voice changer to basically give him a higher optics. That's typically what I do naturally with my voice online. Whereas in person, it's much more deeper and it's more distinct for the most part. Um, that's typically how I operate, basically. So like everybody else, pretty much is trying to protect their name and their face and anything that can pretty much tie anything to who they are, what they are, and how they're living for the most part. Whereas me, I just protect my voice. That's it. That is fucking it. Only protect my voice. I don't give a fuck if you know where I live because I've already doxed myself. I don't give a fuck if you know my children's name. I already said their names. I don't give a fuck if you know my name. I've already said my name many times. Let it be Quants. I've pretty much showed my name many fucking times for the most part. So I'm not really scared of actually being out there for the most part. Everybody pretty much knows it. So I'm not scared of that for the most part. And then a lot of people actually believe that my name is Terrence when in fact that's nothing more than an LLC for online purposes, basically. It's basically a business. That's my business name for the most part for online purposes and doing business in the United States. And that's typically how I get shit done. Um, yeah, so it's shit like that for the most part. MGTOW thread is a trip today. But yeah, that's typically that in a nutshell. Like I was saying about when it comes to human nature, you basically have to understand the psychology, psychological characteristics of feelings, behavior, behavioral traits, and you basically have to understand the feelings and behavioral traits of humankind. And they and for it to actually be human nature, it has to be shared by a large group of people or that group of people for the most part. Unfortunately, not all the stuff what we say about certain people or certain groups of people are shared by the larger group of people for the most part. We tend to generalize, just like women do. When they say all men, we basically using the same tactics that they're using when we say that shit for the most part. And it is what it is. But typically, you have to understand the fact that this is what it is. But the sad part about understanding human nature is first you have to understand your fucking self first. If you don't have no understanding or no grasp of your actual self, then you can't go on to say you understand human nature when you don't have no grasp on your own self. It's basically the famous words of I know a lot of people hate him or dislike him because he said something wrong. Jordan Peterson, you might want to clean your room before you go out trying to clean the world for the most part, or help the world clean up the world for the most part. It's just facts. Clean your closet first. Clean up who you are first. Figure out who the fuck you are first before you try to go out and figure out who the hell everybody else is. It's just facts. That's typically how that works. So you can't just go out talking about I know this, I know that, and I know all this shit when you don't even know your fucking self in the least bit. The sad part about that is I can actually literally watch anybody with or without a face and I can actually profile them. and tell you more about them than they know about their fucking self. Or I can tell you more about them than anybody else can tell you about them for the most part. About just listening to them and listening to like their speech pattern, how they talk, how they act, their positioning if they actually see their faces, how their room is set up, how their computer's set up, like anything. I can pretty much tell you a shit ton about a lot of the people on Facebook or YouTube based on their demeanor and how they carry themselves. It's just facts. And that's typically how it is. That's typically how it is. I basically know everybody based on I basically know everybody. My room's not clean. It's a mess today. I typically know everybody based on how they carry themselves, their cadence, their voice, how they speak, shit like that for the most part. What a lot of people actually don't know about me is a lot of shit I say is done purposely so people think they actually know me. Um, that's typically how I operate and actually happen to move. The fact that you actually admitted your room's not clean, unless you're joking, says a lot about your character for the most part. So I can't even knock you for the fact that you actually can admit that your room's not clean. Would you say all that means I can't afford to make? Or all that means is you're probably procrastinating and you just don't feel like cleaning it. Or it could mean you're just putting it off or you're being lazy basically. Or you got better things that you think you need to do besides clean your room. Either way, that's typically what it means for the most part. It doesn't just mean you can't afford a maid. I'm shoot, because if that was the case, my room wouldn't be clean. But yeah, it's just stuff like that that just like when I hear people say that about human nature, like not all like yeah, basically you can't take a 10% sample size and say this is human nature. You can't say take a like a good example of that of people that always try to use human nature and say they know human nature is I'm gonna use the car analogy that America's DeVille just brought up. Like we would say in a heartbeat that all women have dirty cars. Is that actually true? No, we're generalizing. Not all women have dirty cars. However, there are a large majority of women that have dirty cars. If you know what I mean. Um, there a decent majority? Is there a decent amount of men who have dirty cars? Oh hell yeah, there's a decent amount of men who have dirty cars. That's just facts. Um, a bad sample size of people with clean cars would be me and the cartel princess. We both have clean cars. I don't know how the fuck they're clean. We got toddlers, and I'd have no clue how the fuck they're clean. I don't know if it's just a natural instinct to just clean your car or always keep it looking presentable, or it was like a cultural thing, basically, where you're always looking presentable, basically, or what the fuck it is. Like my car is always clean. Yeah, women tend to have a lot of wrappers. Women tend to have their half their wardrobe in their car too. But I know women actually have half their wardrobe in the car, but they have it in like a small like one of them plastic bins with drawers on it. I've actually seen women like that. We say my driving record's clean, and the thing about that is that actually says a lot about how responsible you are if your driving record's clean. MGTOW threads. And the fact that your gun is clean, that actually says a lot about your character too. That means either A, you were quite possibly had some small, if not a lot, some small or if not a lot of military training or gun training basically, or you've just learned how to clean guns basically because you know you may need it and you know that there's a high chance if you don't clean it, there's a chance of misfire or misfire or backfire basically if you don't clean your gun properly. Either way, that's just a lot about your character. The fact that you actually have a clean your guns are clean, and your driving record clean. That basically says you're a fairly responsible person for the most part. um, just stuff like that. So that would be typically a good portion, good analogy of human nature for the most part, based on those characteristics that you just presented of yourself in the comment section. That's typical human nature in a nutshell. Um, yeah, obviously, yeah, you collect guns. and and I'm going to say I'm gonna take a wild guess based on some of your other comments that you posted in here, MGTOW threads, that you're a very outgoing person. Um, I'm gonna say that you probably are pretty good with customer service too. Um, Based on some of the comments that you made. If not, you're pretty much good with your bros for the most part, and your friends. Based on some of the comments you made in here about, like, hairy balls and shit like that. I'm going to say that you're good. You're good with friends, or you're pretty good. You're good socially for the most part. So you have no problem in a social setting. Is what I'm going to say based on based on the shit that you posted. Um, right? Don't piss them off though. Well, that's typically anybody that you piss off for the most part. So that can go for anyone. Um, and it's just stuff like that. And what I mean by that is you can't take. And the only reason why I know this stuff is because a I'm very good at reading people, and b I actually went to school for psychology. It is what it is. But I've always been very good at reading people before I went to school for psychology. That's probably why I ended up in school for psychology. Um, but yeah, either you cook too much or you cook a lot of unhealthy foods. Either way, either way. Um, another good example of human nature would be MGTOW life. MGTOW life. If you ever talk to MGTOW life, you would think of him as a cautious person. Um, you would think of him as a cautious person, a safe person basically. But if you actually know him, or get to know him even more, you'll realize he drives a motorcycle, which makes him a more adventurous person than he actually lets on. If you actually talk to him in like servers and stuff like that, you would think he's like a very cautious person. You would think he has this like this safe, cautious, you know, um, demeanor about him. Basically, he'd be the one that you would think, okay, so if we need a referee, we would get MGTOW life basically. That's typically how he's portrayed. He's portrayed basically. But if you actually get to know him, you actually see him in pictures on his Harley. You see him down the road taking pictures. First off, you shouldn't be taking pictures while you're on your Harley. That right there lets me know that your ass is crazy. Taking pictures on your Harley. No, MGTOW life. You're gonna send me pictures while look what I seen while I was riding my bike. Motherfucker, were you stopped or were you doing? I was going. Like, wait, I'm gonna need you to put away your iPhone while you're driving your motorcycle, like legit. Like, he'd be sending me pictures while he's on the road driving, riding his motorcycle and shit like that. That right there lets me know that MGTOW life is a pretty adventurous person for the most part. But if you actually talk to him, you would think he's a very safe person. And you'd probably think he's the person that you would need to referee your shit, basically. But if you actually get to know him, you would realize that he's actually a very adventurous person. He's probably more adventurous than most MGTOWs for the most part. Um, yeah, that's typically like learning human nature in a nutshell. Um, Another group of people that I'll bring up now would be another group of people that I'll bring up now is people who always say that they know human nature when they actually don't know human nature, and they barely know themselves. Barely know themselves. Um, is nihilistic black pillars. They say they know human nature when in fact they actually don't know human nature. they tend to work off of a small group, and they tend to want to call it science. That's not science. That's not even pseudoscience. Um, you're basically working off a small sample size of online, like I said, is a good example of that. They tend to use online stats to actually say that all these people do this. If you're going to tell me that all women pick like this, then I'm gonna need you to explain to me why all the Twitch thoughts are dating less than stellar men, basically. I can actually tell you why the Twitch thoughts date less than stellar men. Here's why. One, there's two reasons why Twitch thoughts date like men that look the way they do. From Alinity on down to OK Boomer to Nicola, whatever the fuck her name is. They all date men who look average or below for two reasons. Reason one, their self-esteem is not that high. They have a very high opinion of themselves, but their self-esteem is not high at all. Their self-esteem is very low. And before everybody's like, I don't understand how that is. If they got a very high opinion of themselves, how the hell is your self-esteem low? Make a negative comment under their comment section and see how fast it doesn't get deleted. They have a very low self-esteem. All thoughts, let it be Instagram models, let it be all those people. Put a fucking put a correct constructive criticism comment under one of their videos or under one of their pictures and see how fast their demeanor turns. It's just facts. So that's one reason why Twitch thoughts, IG models, and all them people date people who aren't really all that good looking for the most part. Another reason is they don't want to be outshined by their significant other. It's just facts. They don't want to be outshined by their significant other. Um, what I mean by that is like they want to be the center of attention for the most part. If their significant other is good looking or almost as good looking as them, they cannot be the center of attention because their significant other in them would be the center of attention, or their significant other would be the center of attention for the most part. You see what I'm saying? If your significant other gets a lot of attention and it gets more attention than you, then that takes off of you. If you know what I mean. Um, Twitch thoughts tend to always want this attention and want only attention around them. Here's why a bunch of here's why Twitch thoughts and IG models can always bash each other and only come together when when shit's going south and it doesn't, and whatever happening is not going to benefit their pockets for the most part. Then Twitch thoughts will come to each other's rescue. However, if Twitch thoughts are doing good, they'll bash each other. Hell, I've heard Twitch thoughts bash other Twitch of their subs for watching another Twitch thoughts stream. Facts. It's just shit like that. So Twitch thoughts are always in competition with each other. That's typically how that works. Either their self-esteem is low, or they don't want their significant other to outshine them, or be close to. They don't want their significant other to have as much attention as they're getting. This is typically why Twitch thoughts and IG models tend to date average to not so good-looking men. It's just facts. It's a good example of that is Nicki Minaj. The reason why she didn't stay with Drake is because Drake was more popular than her. The reason why she didn't stay with Meek Mills is because Meek Mills is starting to blow up and get more attention than she does. She didn't want somebody that actually outshines her shine for the most part. She wanted all the attention in a relationship. So if she's in a relationship with somebody, she basically wanted her boyfriend to be attached to them. It's basically like if you have any kids and you take your kids to school, you're known as your kid's dad. Like a good example of that is Laszlo. I'm known as Laszlo's dad. You see what I'm saying? So technically, Laszlo outshines me when I drop him off at school. You see what I'm saying? And that's typically how that works when it comes to Instagram thoughts. Yeah, see, she ended up with a felon. Don't nobody really know too much about him. He's a rapper. What was the last song you heard from him? Think about that. He'll never outshine Nicki Minaj. He'll never outshine Nicki Minaj. This is why she's with him. because technically he's people think he's like a felon, but he's actually a rapper. He's actually a popular rapper. You ever heard of a rapper called Offset? I think his name is Offset. Yeah, he's a rapper, but he would never actually reach the bounds of Nicki Minaj for the most part. This is why she's with him and not with somebody else. That's human nature. That's human nature for women in a nutshell. And this is basically how you understand women a lot better when you actually can understand like people like Twitch Dots and Nicki Minaj. There are a shit ton of women who want their men to be attractive and their men to be the bee's knees up until people start giving their men a lot of attention. Then they start getting jealous and they start getting self-conscious about themselves because you got women coming up to your husband, you got men coming up to your husband, and that's typically what it is. And women would get jealous of that for the most part. Then you got women who want to be the center of attention and want their husband to be a like basically. Here's how it works. In a nutshell, you got women who want attractive men up until they get all the fucking attention, then they feel left out. Aisha Curry. There you go. Then you got women who want their men to be nothing more than a accessory or a purse. You see what I'm saying? That's typically how that works. That's typically how that works. Only thing that can ever outshine, only thing that can ever outshine a woman would be her pet dog. And that is it. Her kids can't even outshine her because she's in competition with her own damn kids. That's human nature. That's base human nature. There's on one end of the spectrum, you got Aisha Curry, who who wants to have more attention than her husband because she's jealous of her husband having all this attention. And on the other end of the spectrum, you got Nicki Minaj, who wants to be the center of attention and want to outshine her husband and basically want her husband to be an accessory. You see what I'm saying? That's two ends of the spectrum. I didn't even talk about the middle ground women. I'm just talking about two ends of the spectrum. On one end, you got, like I said, Aisha Curry. On the other end, you got Nicki Minaj. Women either fall into that category, or somewhere in the middle. That's how that works. This end of the category, I mean, this end of the spectrum, that end of the spectrum, and they're somewhere in the middle for some women. Not all women are going to fall perfectly in the middle. Some's going to be middle right. Some's going to be middle left. Some women are going to be middle. Some women are going to be far left. Some women are going to be far right. It's basically like the politics now. Some women are trad some women are leftists, or whatever the hell the far left is called, basically. And then you got people on the center. You got people right center. You got people left center. You see what I'm saying? Understanding that, that's basically how you can understand human nature. True story. Real femininity does go a long way. Real femininity does go a long way. And that's very true. They have been conditioned to be intolerable. And that's typically what it is. And the sad part about that, it's not the fact that they've been conditioned to be intolerable. It's more or less the fact that they've been conditioned to believe men want the same things women want, or women, or they should act the same way that men act so they can actually attract a man. A lot of women are waking up to this very late in life, far past their expiration date sometimes. Some wake up damn near next to their expiration date. And this is typically what happens. And this is the psychology of a group of people. It's the fundamental difference between of human nature when it comes to tradcons and it comes to feminists or SJWs. They're on two opposites. They're on two opposite ends of the spectrum, but they both want the same damn goal. At the end of the day, they both want the same damn goal. That's typically how that works. You got tradcons on one end, and you got SJWs on the other end. They both want the same damn thing, but they both go about it in a different way to actually get to the same damn thing. That's who a lot of people were actually dealing with in the first world countries. Tracons or SJWs. When you can actually weed out who the Tracons are and the SJWs are, which is fairly easy based on what the fuck they say when they open their mouths. You can tell the difference between an SJW and you can tell the difference between a Tracon. Because an SJW is going to bring up political leanings and then say some stuff, political leanings, and then say how empowered they are, but they want you to pick up this check though. A Tracon is going to say something differently. She's going to basically say, I want to be taken care of, this, that, and the other, and what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to actually keep it a secret. Whereas feminists and SJWs, they basically advertise what they're going to do to you every step of the way. Tracons try to keep it secret. Unfortunately, their secret's out for the longest time, and she really can't keep it secret anymore because everybody knows her playbook. Everybody knows the Tracon playbook now. Now that the red pill MGTOW philosophies came out, everybody knows the Tracon playbook. Everybody knows the SJW playbook too. Because of these. The only people that you really have to worry about now, once you sort out the Tracon and the SJW, is the people in the middle. From the right middle to the left middle, or the actual center. Or I should say left center, right center, actual center. Then you have to basically sort out these people for the most part. You have to basically learn the human nature of these group of people. That's all it really is. So everybody knows a Tracon, everybody knows the SJW, but very few men actually know the people in the middle, the right center, the left center, and the actual center. Centerist women. I'll say the centerist women, the right centerist women, and the left centerist women. You have to learn their playbook. You really do. Because if you don't learn their playbook, a lot of men are going to get rolled over and or not understand how it's supposed to work because the right center's playbook is different from the Tradcom's playbook. The left center's playbook is I'm gonna say the left center and the right center are basically covert playbooks. They be like black op playbooks, basically. That's typically how that works. They're close to their left and right counterparts. They do some of the stuff that their left and right counterparts do, but they don't display the same behaviors as their left and right counterparts. Once you understand the right center and the left center, then you can sort out those people. Then you have the center women. Not too many men get to see the center women. Hell, 9 times out of 10, you done seen the Tradcon, you done seen the right center women, you done seen the left center women, you done seen the right leaning women, because they're all in your face basically. Either they have a high ass skirt or a low ass cut shirt, or their belly button is showing. Either way, those are not the women who you want, but those are the women that's going to catch your attention first. It's just facts. The neat thing about it is the right and the left does it a little bit differently. It'd be it'd be like the difference between the right would be basically Picasso or Rembrandt would be the Tradcons on the right. Picasso or Rembrandt. The people on the left would be pretty much your children's finger painting class. That's the best way to describe it. The people on the left are your children's finger painting class when it comes to artistic work. The people on the right are your Picassos or your Rembrandts. The people who are right center tend to have some of the Rembrandt or the Picasso, but not all Picasso and not all Rembrandt. So they're able to hide it a little bit better. Left center are pretty much they're a step up from finger painters. Basically, they'd be like your they'd be like them classes, the painting with wine, basically, or painting and drinking classes for the most part. They would be those guys for the most part. They're a step up from the finger paints. They're basically learning to paint and they look a little bit better for the most part than their far left leaning counterparts. Um, yeah, true. Sometimes that's typically the difference between those. That's the difference between those four groups for the most part. Um, Another good way to actually determine the difference between left leaning and right leaning is makeup, or feminist and conservative is makeup. Unless they're old as hell, we're gonna exclude all the old women. We're gonna say the women that between the ages of you know uh 18 to 18 to 32. We'll say. I'm just picking a range. The women on the left who are 18 to 32 tend to look like they got war paint on. Just saying. If they don't look like they got war paint on, they act like they go natural. When in fact they're actually not going natural. There's a difference between wearing rouge and blush and like, you know, just powdering the bags under your eyes. Big difference. Big difference. The women on the right tend to not overdo it and tend to have the more natural look on their faces when it comes to makeup. They tend to not go extravagant and have like the war paint. So when we see a conservative come out, you're not looking to go grab your fatigues and your gun to go to war. When a leftist come out, you're pretty much looking for your fatigues and your M4 to basically go to war because she looks like a clown. It's just facts. It's just fucking facts. Um, so the makeup jobs on for the left and right are two totally different styles of makeup. Sometimes, oh, and grooming is another good example of that too. The the right tends to be more prim, proper, and they'll do a lot more, upkeep on their body. The left, on the other hand, she just might have some body hair, some leg hair, some armpit hair, some a mustache, the whole nine. She might not even smell good either because she might not wear no deodorant. I'm just saying. That tends to be the women on the left. The women on the right smell good. They know what they got to do to get men. They try their best to always get men, and that's what they do. Women on the right, on the other hand, it'd be no different than if you ignored somebody and they do everything in their power to get your attention. For the most part, it'd be no different than if my 16-year-old daughters, if I decided to ignore my 16-year-old daughters, and they decided to parade outside the house in a high cut skirt and a low cut shirt. I'd be beating some asses, and they'd all be on punishment. Basically, that's the right for you. They tend to go out of their way to grab your attention by any way, shape, or form. Hence why they do the pussy hats and the nude and the slut walk. They basically just want attention. That's all it the fuck is. They'll get attention. They'll get attention any way, shape, or form that they can. Period. That's why they do the slut walk, and that's why they wear the pussy hats, and that's why they're screaming and acting a fool in public. That's their way of getting your attention. They basically just want to be loved just as much as you are, but they're going about it the wrong way. They're basically like that. They're basically like a what's it called? What's the name of that mental illness where you basically act up just to get attention for the most part. You basically just act a fool just to get attention. That's typically the left. That's pretty much all women on the left. They're very obnoxious. They're very loud. They're very annoying. They do brash and abrasing things on purpose just for attention because they don't want to take the time to look like the women on the right. So therefore, this is what they got to do to get your attention. Women on the right, they just put some heels on, throw on a little bit of makeup, throw on maybe some stockings that some men like, a shirt that, a man happened to give her a compliment on. They tend to actually they may not act like they take cues from men, but if a man gives them a compliment, they're more likely to do that more than if a woman gives them a compliment. It's just facts. So a good example is if you ever told a woman she looks nice in such on something or her hair looks nice a certain way, she's more likely to mimic that same haircut or that same style of dress in all the rest of her clothing from there on out. That's women on the right. Women on the left, you need to accept them for them, when in fact you actually don't have to accept them for them. That's typically how that works. Another good example is how they carry themselves. Right? That's just a mixed bag. I mean, left, that's a mixed bag of Lord knows what the fuck that is on the left. I basically said how they act. Basically, they're brash, they rude, they're dead, they do all this other shit. Women on the right tend to be more demure and act more submissive for the most part. When in fact we know they're not all that submissive. The women on center right tend to be more submissive than the women on the far right or the tradcons for the most part. The women that are left center are more submissive than the women on the far left. It's just facts. You still don't want to date them either way. So you don't want to date a left center woman and you don't want to date a right center woman. If you do find a woman, you want her to be center center. It's just facts. Um, that's typically what you want. However, that group of women is that group of women or that pool of women is very very small. It's very very hard to find that woman when in fact you got pretty much everybody running around like a rapper video or a model video for the most part. This is what you get on both sides. You got a bunch of goofy bitches acting stupid like they're in a rap video, and you got a bunch of women running around like they're on America's Next Top Models. So the right acts like America's Next Top Models. The left acts like they're in a rap video. That's typically how that works. That's typically how that works for the most part. Um, yeah. And that's basically me explaining human nature much more in depthly when it comes to the left and the right. Hell, men even act the same way on the left and the right for the most part. Men tend to be more. However, for the most part, most men tend to be center or right center or left center for the most part. Most men. There's not too many men that are actually far right, and there's not too many men that are far left. That's a small minority of men. Small minority of men that are far right, and a far small of a small minority of men that are far left. Most men tend to stay left center, right center, center. That's typically where most men, majority of the men gauge in life. That is the human nature, overall human nature of men. Right center, center, left center. That is the vast majority of men right there. Women, on the other hand, they're either far right or far left. Typically, they're either hot or they're cold for the most part, is the best way to describe it. Hot or cold, hot or cold. Pick one. That's the vast majority of women. They're far right, far left. Um, yeah, that's typically how it works. That's typically the best way for you to pick out what type of woman you're dealing with when she actually walks up to you, based on what type of woman that you're dealing with from afar for the most part, because you can actually tell the difference between the two women based on how they act, how they dress, and how they carry themselves. Most black women tend to be far right. I mean, far left. It's just facts. No matter how you cut it, it's just facts. Most white women tend to be far right. That's how that works. Most white women are far right. Most other minorities tend to fall in the center or middle for the most part. Most of the other minorities in the United States or any first world country tend to fall left center, right center. Because after you come to the United States, you get Americanized. After you come to the United States, you get Americanized. You move from the center. You eventually have to pick a side because first world countries make you pick a side. Third world countries don't make you pick a side. First world countries make you pick a side. So most women who come from other countries, let them be Muslim. This is how you end up with like a lot of the women with divorces from like Malaysia or Arab countries or Latin America for the most part, or acting a fool in America for the most part. Because when they're in their own country, they're center. When you take them out their own damn country or their own damn environment, they're right center, left center. That's not how you want your women. You don't want your women to be anything but center. Not left center, not right center. Most minority women tend to fall in the right center or the left center. White women fall on the right on far right. Black women fall on the far left. There's a small minority of white women that fall on the far left, and there's a small minority of black women who fall on the far right. There's an even smaller pool of women from both those groups who fall in the center somewhere. That's typically how that works. That's human nature in a nutshell. That's the best way I can describe human nature to you. I mean, I could break it down. I could break it down even more for you if you think if you're anybody's lost or doesn't quite understand it. I could break it down even more for you if you need me to. But that's typically the human nature of women in a nutshell. Most white women are far right. Most black women are far left. Some black women are far right. Some white women are far right. Most other minority women from Asians, Latinas, Arabs, Indians tend to be either center right or center left. That's how that works. And like I said, you don't want any woman that's center right or center left or right, basically. You don't want none of them women. If they're not center, you need to throw her back in a pond like she's a fish. It'd be no different if you need to catch a big fish for your family and you end up with a bunch of guppies. You're pretty much going to throw that thing back until you get a big ass salmon or a big ass marlin for the most part so you can feed your family. That's typically how that works. You want a marlin, you don't want no guppy, basically. um, that's typically, yeah, that's pretty much human nature in a nutshell. I'm pretty much wrap this up because I don't want to hold you guys hostage. And I thought I'd make this video to basically clear up any misconceptions and a lot of the shit that a lot of people were saying, and a lot of the information that a lot of people were putting out there about human nature. Um, y'all have a blessed day. It was good serving you guys. Stay MGTOW, Red Pill, SYSB, and it more till you die, basically. All right, deuces. Yeah, definitely no sharks. You don't want no damn sharks.